Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here, and thank you so much for joining us for Samba TV's State of Advertising webinar. Today, we'll be sharing insights, trends, takeaways from today's evolving advertising landscape. We pulled all of the data here from the first half of 2025, and the information is pulled here in the United States. Looks like we've got a great turnout already. We were just talking about how we don't often hop onto webinars early, so it's so great to see so many folks engaged and hopping on early to join us. Thank you for spending time with us. I'm Allison Sprague. I'm the VP of Measurement Science here at Samba TV. I'm also a mom, a licensed skydiver, and a self-proclaimed data nerd.
And I'm Becca Fine, Associate Director of Marketing Insights and Content here at Samba. I love all things TV. My favorite show of the year so far was probably Severance. And when I'm not watching TV or working on uncovering TV trends like what we're going to share with you today, you can catch me playing tennis, reading, or hiking. Before we take off, two quick notes. First, we welcome your questions. Please submit your questions through the Zoom Q&A feature. We will save some time at the end to answer live. Second, we'll have some fun with live polling today. When a polling question comes up, you'll see a prompt from Zoom and you'll be able to answer the multiple choice question.
All right. As fellow marketers and measurement professionals, Becca and I understand that planning and measuring advertising can sometimes feel like, well, jumping out of an airplane. But you can think of Samba's State of Advertising report as your flight plan, guiding you through that fog to a successful landing. And today, we'll start by reviewing the methodology around how Samba collects that data.
Then we'll talk about how we use that data to support customers by showcasing the top advertising trends from the year so far.
And then I'll dive into details on who is seeing those ads, and we'll wrap up with actionable insights and takeaways. All right, Becca, are you ready for takeoff?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Samba really is emerging as the global leader in AI-driven media intelligence. You may know us best for our TV data, and that's certainly not wrong. We pioneered early visual automated content recognition technology, also known as ACR, which allows us to recognize just about all the content and ads that hit the smart TV glass. And to this day, we're still the only first-party ACR data provider in the world collecting opt-in only, privacy-first data from over 20 global TV brands. But today, we're more than just a TV data provider. We connect what people watch on TV to what they do on the open web. And this gives brands, publishers, and content providers that first-class ticket to better media decisions faster. And we'll demonstrate some of these insights in today's webinar, starting with advertising trends. Becca, take it away.
Thank you, Allison. I'm still impressed you are a skydiver, by the way. I could never. But the first half of 2025 has shown us that different advertisers are responding to economic uncertainty in very different ways. Let's dig into the trends. So, starting with the big picture, despite the economic downturn, we're seeing that 68% of the top 100 brands actually increased their TV ad impressions in H1. This tells us that advertisers are leaning into the uncertainty and using this moment to capture market share while competitors may be pulling back. Very smart of them. A perfect example of this strategic divide is in telco. T-Mobile increased their TV ad impressions by 34%, ranking sixth overall, while Verizon cut spend by 37%. We see that T-Mobile is in all-out growth mode, trying to gain new customers, while Verizon is shifting its focus to customer retention and reallocating budget to digital and CTV, where they can more precisely target existing customers. I'm already a T-Mobile customer, and even I've been seeing that Billy Bob Thornton ad everywhere, so this wasn't entirely surprising to me.
And I'm a Verizon customer, so we're well represented. But I think it's worth noting that neither of these strategies is necessarily better than the other, and both were effective in their respective goals. So in Q2 earnings calls, Verizon touted one of the best retention rates in the industry, and that number's been growing since starting this TV strategy. And T-Mobile also posted a record quarter, and in that call, they credited new customer growth as a key success driver. So it's really cool to see these strategies pay off for these brands.
Speaking of strategies paying off, as everyone who saw that Sydney Sweeney jeans campaign knows, the highest ad spend does not always translate to winning online conversation. We did see some standout brands this half from a sentiment perspective, though, with Progressive and Domino's and Dupixent, in particular, turning their ad dollars into meaningful connections with audiences. Progressive, in fact, was number one or number two across TV ad impressions, positive online sentiment, and social sentiment during the half. When we investigated what was driving this, we saw that audiences were really connecting with their commitment to customer service and their innovative policies.
Slightly different than having the best jeans.
Just a little bit. So zooming out at the category level, per usual, we saw that entertainment advertisers served the most impressions, and that was thanks to host channel promotion. But the really interesting change here was in the health space. So looking at the combo of pharma and health and beauty, we see that 21% of all TV ad impressions were served by advertisers within these categories. This makes perfect sense in the context of economic uncertainty. As consumers prioritize health over luxuries, these categories are doubling down on their messaging.
Yeah, that definitely tracks. That Ozempic jingle burned in my brain forever.
Oh God, don't make me sing it. Okay, it's now time for our first polling question of the day. These are fun, and I do get weirdly competitive to see if we can stump the audience. So please respond to the prompt in Zoom. And the question is, which group of advertisers saw a bigger increase in TV ad impressions during the first half of the year? Was it A, restaurants, or B, at-home food and bev? We'll see the answer on the next slide in just a minute here. All right, let's get the votes in. And people thought that it was B, at-home food and bev, but the answer is actually A, restaurants. I thought this juxtaposition was super interesting. We saw that spend across restaurant brands was up 6%, while food and bev was down by that same margin of 6%. This trend aligned with data from a McKinsey report that showed restaurants were the top category where people plan to treat themselves, even in an economic downturn. I too need my sweet green at least once a week, so found this one very relatable. But taking a macro look at this slide, we see in general that advertiser spend is mirroring consumer priorities. We're seeing services and self-investment categories grow, while big ticket items like automotive and travel are declining. This shift reflects consumers being more cautious with major purchases, but still investing in health and services and personal improvement. Looking at the list of brands that increased spend the most year over year, we saw a mix of challenger brands and established players making targeted investments. The two standout trends were essential home goods and high stakes service sectors, really upping the ante. So, for example, we saw Rocket Mortgage ads increase 531% despite a stagnant housing market, which actually corresponded with its acquisition of Redfin. On the essential home goods front, we saw a very interesting story with General Mills. It was the number one brand with the highest year-over-year increase, and that came from a very strategic shift from focusing on individual products to a multi-product brand campaign, part of which featured Taylor Swift's now fiance, as of today, huge news. But you can see that Cheerios, Nature Valley, and Haagen-Dazs ads were all down, while General Mills as a whole was up by that extremely high number. The idea here was to boost the entire General Mills brand portfolio through one set of cohesive ad campaigns. And then looking at the brands that pulled back spend the most dramatically, many came from discretionary categories like automotive, for example. Honda and Volkswagen are on that list. Some interesting contrasts emerged, however, like with that big 61% Dunkin' drop. On the next page, we see that that was very different from its competitor, Starbucks. Starbucks TV ad impressions were actually up 88% year over year as part of their big Back to Starbucks campaign, emphasizing third places and the quality of their coffee. This campaign was all about the baristas, the coffee itself, and really the delight of posting up at a Starbucks for hours. And this was a very deliberate move away from past campaigns emphasizing discounts and promotions. Here, they were really leaning into the quality and personal connection side of the business. A little different than Dunkin'.
Totally relatable. I'm pretty sure my Starbucks spend has also increased 88% year over year.
There you go, it's working. And then finally, one interesting strategy we're seeing from TV networks. They're using their own primetime ad slots to promote their streaming services. ABC is funneling their massive linear audience to Hulu. CBS is funneling to Paramount Plus, and it's a really smart way to accelerate the transition to streaming while maintaining control of audience relationships. This is expensive airtime too, and it's interesting to see that these networks are prioritizing their own growth over the ad dollars that they could be getting during that time. This is a space that's really evolving in real time. Like just a few weeks ago, with Paramount acquiring rights to UFC, the whole model is changing. So, this push from networks to streaming platforms is a huge signal of what's to come in the massive world of live sports. And then finally, this next slide here is an example of one of our vertical deep dives from the report. These are where we really zero in on different industries and highlight the key players in each. This one here is focusing on the automotive space, where we saw some really interesting trends emerge. In the face of tariff uncertainties, we saw that overall automotive advertising was down 8%. And that was largely impacted by foreign manufacturers like Hyundai, Nissan, and Lexus cutting spend, while American brands like Chevrolet and Ford increased it. Within the report itself, we also dive into travel, retail, telco, QSR, insurance, and pharma. So definitely take a look for more info there. All right, over to you, Allison.
Awesome. Thank you, Becca. These are really some fascinating trends here. And one through line I'm seeing in what you shared is this interplay of ads as both a reflection of culture and also an active creator of it. I mean, 2 years ago, Travis Kelce was a football player, not Taylor Swift's fiance, and I'm not sure he would have gotten the General Mills deal without Swifty. So it's really interesting to see how ads both create and reflect human nature and the culture around us. But to do that and to move from promotional message to cultural zeitgeist, ads have to reach the right people at the right time with the right message. So, who is seeing all of these ads that Becca shared with us? And which audiences are we missing? Let's find out. Well, in the first half of this year, TV ad impressions actually under-indexed on reaching young adults. And I think if this were linear only data, it wouldn't at all be surprising because we all know that linear TV viewership does skew towards older audiences. But remember that this includes data from both linear and streaming TV. And it's about ad exposure, not just content viewership. So this suggests that brands are likely underutilizing CTV inventory and still over budgeting on linear, especially if their target audience is 18 to 45.
Yeah, I have a cousin who's extremely Gen Z, and I swear to you, she asked me who the Geico Gecko was the other day. So truly nothing will surprise me anymore.
Okay, I cannot relate. But one might assume that reaching that older audience would mean that ads skew towards also reaching more affluent households, or at least maybe those that are more financially established. The data here tells the opposite story, though. TV advertisers are actually under indexing on reaching those affluent households by up to 13%. And that's not just any 13%, that's 13% of the population with the highest spending power. And speaking of spending power, non-white audiences have huge spending power. And these audiences are largely underreached by today's TV advertisers. For example, relative to their population size, Hispanic and Asian audiences specifically under-indexed on TV ad reach by up to 30%. Earlier this year, Samba released the State of Diversity in TV report, where we revealed that over 40% of all TV programming cast members were non-white. So it seems like we are making progress in representation, but perhaps we still have gaps in reaching those audiences with relevant messaging. So let's bring this all together. We know younger adults, affluent households, and non-white audiences are watching TV, and we know that advertisers have all the tools they need to reach them. So we wanted to dive in to understand why these gaps still exist. And the answer to that question might just be in geographic data. We broke out ad impression distribution on TV by state. We found a pretty significant geographic skew. The TV ads over-index in reaching states in the Northeast, Midwest, and South, and they underserve Western states. Now, I'm a California native, so I hate to see this, but to be honest, I'm also not surprised because this map mirrors the outputs of legacy media planning solutions. These solutions favor more established and traditional TV audiences, and they fail to account for high growth states like Texas and densely populated states like California, where media consumption is more fragmented. In other words, relying on traditional media planning tools will bias ad distribution toward traditional media audiences. The good news is advertisers can solve this challenge by using advanced audience targeting to fill in those gaps that traditional media planning misses. Once again, that's younger adults, affluent households, Hispanic and Asian audiences, and, as we see here, Western states. All right, now is where I pause and ask for your participation. I'm going to ask two questions back to back. After asking them, we'll look at the results afterward. So please do vote and put in your best guess, and we'll see where we land. All right, our first question. What was the year-over-year change in time spent watching streaming TV in the first half of this year versus the same time last year? Was it down 5%, up 12%, up 28%, up 46%, or was it flat? Excited to see our observations here. All right, so most of us look like we're in that up 28%. A few of us thinking that maybe time spent with CTV went down. All right, great. Thank you so much for participating. Let's go to the next question and then we'll find the results. All right, same question, but this time for linear TV. So what was the year-over-year change in time spent watching linear TV in the first half of this year versus prior year? Was it down 20%, down 5%, up 8%, up 12%, or was it flat? Excited to hear what folks think about this one. All right. Looks like almost tied neck and neck between down 20% and down 5%. A few of us thinking it's flat. So looks like most of us think we're up about 28% on CTV and definitely down on the time spent with linear. Let's take a look at what the data tells us here. All right. Well, for those of you that got it right, maybe you've read the report or you've got great intuition. But as we see here, the time spent watching connected TV has grown 46% year over year. At the same time, linear TV time watched is essentially flat. And that 46% increase that you see on CTV equates to nearly a billion extra hours that our consumers in the United States are watching today versus the same time last year. And as I was diving through this data, it really brought up two fascinating subtexts. The first is that in prior years, these changes were driven largely by a shift in consumer behavior. We had the cord cutters, the cord nevers, but today they're also driven by content shifts. The Academy Awards, WWE or WWF for the OGs, and Sesame Street, they're just a handful of historically linear only programs that ran on streaming services for the first time this year. And the second interesting trend is fascinating to see that the growth in streaming is happening without the decline in time spent with linear, which suggests that at least on average overall, we're watching more TV content. And that time spent with streaming isn't necessarily taking away from our time with linear TV as much as it has in past years.
Got to be honest here, Allison, this totally tracks. I am a recent Survivor convert, and the many hours I'm spending per week watching that is entirely supplemental to all of the shows in my regular rotation. So, a lot of TV overall.
Nice. Survivor, the original reality television. Um, Great. So while that may mean good news for linear networks, it may be a different story for advertisers because those ad dollars still haven't yet followed the eyeballs. A staggering 94% of TV ad impressions were shown to only 50% of households. And those households saw TV ads approximately 150 times per day. On the other hand, medium and light TV viewers only saw 6% of TV ad impressions and an average of 9 TV ads per day. And as a mom, this totally tracks. Most of my time is spent watching Sesame Street on Hulu, Miss Rachel on Netflix, Bluey on Disney Plus, and to be honest, I can't actually recall the last time I saw an ad on the big screen. And what that means for brands is that they're likely still over investing in linear TV and under investing in reaching those audiences on connected TV. So if you're a marketer in the middle of Q4 or 2026 planning, you may want to consider shifting more of your planned media spend towards reaching those light TV viewers, whether you're reaching them on CTV or across different platforms. This tactic will help fill all of the gaps we noted today, extending to young adults, diverse audiences, affluent households, and Western states. And for our last content slide here, let's talk about sports because there is a massive shift happening in sports entertainment right now. And it's giving advertisers more access to this audience than ever before. And in this case, those ad dollars are following the eyeballs. Statista estimates sports advertising will reach a $180 billion market size in the next 5 years, which is up 80% from today. And sports sponsorship is a large portion of this revenue, but it's historically been seen as unmeasurable. Samba AI can help solve this gap. We use computer vision to detect logos on jerseys, in digitally delivered ad placements, or in signage around the arena. And for example, as we see in this slide, we looked at the NBA Finals Game 5 and we analyzed Nike's two-brand strategy. Nike was able to dominate the courts and increase their reach and frequency by using both the Nike swoosh and the Jordan logo on those jerseys. So if you or your partners are planning a sponsorship in 2025 and beyond, whether that's the Olympics or the World Cup or your local sports broadcast, we'd love to hear from you and work with you to measure these outcomes. All right. We have covered a ton of information in our time, and we hope that you found this information insightful and actionable. Before we sign off, though, we're going to cover 5 key strategies that you can take into your Q4 and 2026 planning strategy. Becca, take it away.
All right. First of all, shift your strategy to a streaming first approach. Our data reveals an undeniable truth. The streaming migration is not only happening, it's accelerating. Audiences, especially younger ones like me and Allison, for example, some solid millennials, are abandoning traditional cable for the flexibility and convenience of streaming. And to win, your strategy can no longer be linear first. We at Samba are happy to help you make this shift seamlessly. Our data allows you to identify and target the streaming audience with show level insights and reallocate budgets to where they'll have the most impact.
Second, it's important to prioritize precision over ad load. We learned today that advertisers are reaching just a fraction of the US population and likely at a very high frequency. And there's 2 major gaps that could be costing brands trillions in revenue. The affluent ad gap means that high-income households with the most spending power are being underserved, and the diversity connect, where Hispanic and Asian audiences, 2 of the fastest growing consumer segments, are also being underreached by TV advertisers. And the solution here is precision. At Samba, we can help you identify those overexposed households, reallocate the spend to reach the underserved households, and help you measure and optimize with precision.
Next, make sure you are using competitive intelligence to win. The data is a tale of two cities, or more accurately, a tale of two very different advertising philosophies. We saw major brands within the same sectors take dramatically different paths. T-Mobile and Verizon, Starbucks and Dunkin'. Some leaned in aggressively to gain new customers, while others pulled back to focus on retention. This isn't about one being right and the other wrong. It's about making a strategic choice. Samba TV empowers you to make that choice with data. We can give you competitive intelligence that allows you to see exactly where your rivals are spending their money and who they are reaching. You can then use this insight to either directly conquest their audience or find new, underserved opportunities to dominate.
Number four, it wouldn't be 2025 if we didn't mention AI. And here at Samba, we encourage and empower you to use artificial intelligence to discover non-obvious insights and quantify the value of your media. Because winning isn't about who spends the most, it's about who spends the smartest. And being the smartest often starts with uncovering those non-obvious insights that give you an unfair advantage. We can help you do this with AI-driven media intelligence, including the AI logo detection product that we saw with the NBA Finals game, demonstrating Nike's dual dominance between the swoosh and Jordan Air logos. These insights can help brands ensure every dollar, every ad, and every sponsorship are measurably effective.
All right. Lastly, we've seen that winning isn't just about how many times your ad is seen. You need to be reaching the right audience at the right time. And oftentimes that means reaching an audience that has shown intent to buy. We've seen how brands like Progressive and Domino's are balancing online conversation and social sentiment with high impression counts. And this is exactly the type of data you can use to connect TV attention with online intention. We can help you identify audiences who have been exposed to your ads or competitor ads, pair that with data around what these people are searching for and talking about online, and activate your own campaigns to nurture them at a precise moment in the marketing funnel. Really powerful stuff.
Awesome. That concludes our presentation. We are going to start answering, I think we have 2 minutes here. We'd love to start answering some of your questions live. Looks like we've gotten a few submitted already, but please feel free to submit using the Q&A feature here in Zoom. And if we don't get to your question today, we'll certainly follow up. Let me look through some of these. Becca, do you want to take the first question?
Yeah. All right. So, first question here. I've joined a few of these webinars in the past and love them. I know you've included TV viewership as part of these reports. Is that coming soon? Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining. And yes, you are totally right. We usually do include TV viewership within these webinars, like top shows, top movies, some deep dives into platforms and whatnot. And that is not included here. We did split out the viewership and advertising sections of what used to be the state of viewership report to make them a little more targeted, more digestible. So, state of streaming report will be coming out later this fall. Likely October, don't quote me on that though. But that will include a much deeper dive into entertainment advertising, viewership of top shows, top movies, a lot of additional data cuts like that.
Amazing. You know what? I just noticed we're actually up on time. So we will follow up with the rest of the questions on email. Thank you so much for submitting. And thank you again for joining us. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.